When we made our McDonald's Spicy Chicken McNuggets, you were praise hands emoji. Then we ran out, and you were streaming tears emoji. Now they're back, so you can be grinning face with sweat emoji. Order ahead on the McDonald's app.
And get Money Mouth Face emoji with 2 orders of crispy, irresistible 10-piece McNuggets, spicy or classic, for just $6. Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. I'm Terry Lipshetz, managing editor of the National Newsroom at Lee and co-host of the program with Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal and a longtime entertainment reporter. And this week we've got, the ones and the zeros and all the what is it real or isn't it? It's AI is taking over the world.
What do you think when you hear that? When you hear about the future, what do you think?
Of AI, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to come back through a portal and try to destroy the world, and we've got to stop him.
It's always doom and gloom, isn't it?
It is. It's terrible.
Always about something bad is going to happen. And interestingly, there are shows now this month on PBS that talk about the future. A Brief History of the Future. Interesting series that talks about, is it going to be that bad? Or do we have to worry about machines taking over and telling us what to do? Or is it a different kind of a world? And that's what was fascinating about watching that, is that it said, wait a minute, we can determine the future by planning ahead. If we look 20 years into the future and say, what do you want it to be like 20 years from now? And then build toward that, we could have a better future. And then I think I talked to you about Miles O'Brien before. Miles O'Brien is a correspondent for PBS, and he found that it helped him get this artificial arm that was technology in a good sense. So there are things like that make you feel maybe tomorrow isn't as bad as I thought. It's not like 2001. It's not like all of the bad kind of Darth Vader-esque rulers that we see. And so I thought, well, what would that be like for us? What kind of a future would you like to have? So, Tara, what would you see as the future for you?
Future for me. Well, I mean, I like, with this program, I like how AI helps make us sound better.
I'm waiting.
It does, though. I mean, we talked about it about a week ago, that it can clean up our audio a little bit. So that's kind of cool. Anything that sort of can help make my job easier. We don't want to be replaced. That's not what we're looking for. But
No.
we want things to kind of, it's those mundane tasks. Like I think back to my early days as a journalist, right? I would go out and I would interview somebody and have a tape recorder, and then I would go out and we get that recording, and I get back to the office and I have to play the tape, and I would type it in, and I realize, oops, I missed that part, so I have to stop, click, rewind, go back, over and over again. Today we could do an interview and then just drop a file into a program, and it'll pull out a full transcript, and then I could take that transcript. And it might need a little cleanup because maybe it misses a word here or there, but you can get a almost 100% accurate transcript of what we talked about, and then help speed up writing a story that much more efficient, and give you better notes and all of that. So even just driving my car, I mean, my car has a little radar sensor, and as I'm driving, it knows if I drift a little bit and moves me back into the lane, right? It knows that
Gary has fallen asleep. Wake up, Gary. Wake up.
I'll switch over to the minivan, and next thing I know it, my lane, I'm closing in a little too quick, and realize, oops, I don't have that feature on this car, so I actually do have to slow down. But it's like little things like that just helps. It makes my life easier, makes my life safer. So that's kind of what I would like.
What about entertainment?
Maybe getting a little bit more predictive. Hulu and Netflix and Apple TV Plus and all these things, and just like, what show should I watch next? It would be nice to maybe get more recommendations off of things that, based on my viewing history and habits, might give me, some ideas of something to watch, for instance. That would be helpful.
Have you looked at that, though? Sometimes when they do, you go, wait a minute, where did they get this idea that I would have liked this?
That's
It's
right.
like, I'm not so sure this is one for me. But what would you go for those goggles that Apple is promoting where you would be kind of part of the scene? Would you want that kind of visor thing over your face? And you're walking through a scene. Would you like that?
That might blow my mind.
Yeah, I've tried it before, and I'm not a fan, but maybe it's because I like to have my distance. I don't want to be a part of anything. It's like going to a comedian show, and I think we've mentioned this before. I don't want to be part of the act, so don't pick on me. And I don't want to be a part of. I like seeing things in dimension. I think that's a great kind of asset. And when you watch a 3D movie, that's fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
If it's a big dinosaur coming at you from Jurassic World, I'm not so sure I want that. But I do think that there are technology things that could make it better for us. And I do want it at home. I know that sounds terrible. I love going to the movies. I love going to the theater. But I really would like to have, when I choose to have it, in my house. You know how you hear about a movie, like somebody will say, oh, this is coming out Friday at a theater near you. And you think, well, I'd like to see that now. Let's just watch that now. And it would appear very quickly on your screen. Those are the things I look at. And I think, it's sense around. Do you remember when that came out? Or even if you had stereo sound around your house, you're probably wired like that, where you have speakers all around you and you feel like you're in this center of sound. I love that. I think that really feels very immersive, and you feel like if you're rain falling and you think it does sound like it's raining,
right?
And then you look out the window and you say, "Oh, it is raining." So I guess it wasn't all that great. But I think all those little things like that could make entertainment better. But we'll see. Now, what about shows? Are there? I'm sure you looked at things. You said, here we need to have a sequel to this. I would like them to redo this. AI could give you any characters again. You could have, Harrison Ford. We saw a little bit of that with the last Indiana Jones film, where they could de-age him and put him in anything. Would you want to see something like that? Would you want to have Casablanca Part 2? Or would you like to have Gone with the Wind, with the Wind, with the Wind, with the Wind?
Yeah.
Part 9.
It's an interesting discussion, because that's also something that came up as part of the strike this past year was image and likeness, where can you use somebody's image in a film that they don't necessarily participate in? I kind of go both ways on this. Like I feel like with Harrison Ford, and they did it also with The Irishman, with like Robert De Niro. They did it with Mark Hamill in the Star Wars films, where they de-age you. And I think that's fine, because these actors are actually actively participating in the film, but it's just a new technology. Instead of using like makeup and prosthetics and things like that to make you look younger, they're using a computer to de-age you and make you look younger. So I don't really think of that as being different. I think there's an ethical question, though, that comes into play when you look at something like when Ghostbusters did Afterlife, and they were able to bring Harold Ramis back. He has been dead for how many years now, but he appeared in the movie as a ghost. The Ramis family estate was fine with that, signed off on it. Then that's great. I don't have a problem with it. And that question came up also with like Princess Leia and being included in one of the last movies after Carrie Fisher had died. Grand Moff Tarkin in the original, when they did the Rogue One Star Wars story, he had been dead for Peter Cushing had been dead for how many years, and all of a sudden he's there in the movie. So if the family signs off on it, then I guess I feel okay about it, but it does bring in some ethical dilemmas, I guess.
When we made our McDonald's Spicy Chicken McNuggets, you were praise hands emoji. Then we ran out, and you were streaming tears emoji. Now they're back, so you can be grinning face with sweat emoji. Order ahead on the McDonald's app.
And get Money Mouth Face emoji with 2 orders of crispy, irresistible 10-piece McNuggets, spicy or classic, for just $6. Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
We had Brandon Lee in The Crow, and he had died before they finished the film, but they finished the film. And so they had to use other kind of techniques. They'd have another actor as a stunt person, and then they'd superimpose his face from another scene on, and that I think is going a little far afield. I don't know that I want to see Marilyn Monroe dropped into a movie because it could do it. I don't know that that's real, because she has no control over how she is portrayed or what she's portraying. So I don't know that that's a good idea, but there are instances where it might be just that little bit they need to make it go over the line. It could work, or it could be really crass.
Right. And then you think about even with music, where Kiss just had its farewell tour, right? But there's talk now that Kiss will kind of continue on in some form, because maybe you'll go to a concert and see these holograms of them performing.
Whitney Houston.
Right. And is this really like, wait, I'm going to pay
Michael Jackson.
$200 to go to an arena and watch not real people perform? Is this really, do I want to do that? No, I don't think so.
And I don't think so. No, I think for me it's a no, because you see it and it's still not quite there.
Yeah.
Now, maybe if it does get there, we'll all go, "Wow, why have we been missing this all these years?" But I don't know that I want to go to that direction. Now, if somebody finds this podcast 50 years from now and says, "Well, those two are so stupid. This should have been happening all along. This is the best thing ever." And it would play into my hand where I don't have to leave my house. Okay. I can have Whitney Houston in my living room and she can sing to me, So maybe that's the force of it. Okay, then is there content you'd like to see? Is there a kind of show? Is there a movie that you'd like to see?
Using AI?
Using any kind of futuristic thing. If you say, "I would like to see this."
I'm not sure.
Because, every once in a while you'll run across a story that you think that would make a great movie, but who's going to produce it? Yeah. Are you going to, we don't have the money to produce it, but if they were able to do it, I think it would be fascinating.
So you can almost type in you can go to your AI generator and offer,
and it would
some
create it for you.
Create it for me. Interesting. Almost like an animated type of thing to a degree.
It could.
Yeah.
It could.
I mean, I've had some fun with Chat GPT. I put in one time, write me an episode of Cheers where the characters go back and it had been sold and it became an Applebee's, and it gave me a plot line, and it was kind of comical.
Was it good?
No, it was terrible.
Okay.
But it was funny. Like I laughed hysterically. Like it was just kind of humor.
Get you off the dime, because if you're a writer and you're sitting there, how am I going to do this? And then you'd see that idea, and maybe that would be enough to trigger your own idea.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I probably would do more harm than good to this. I think I'm a bit lazy in my thinking on this, and I would probably just try to recreate a show that's been off the air for 20 years and bring it up to date. And it would mostly likely be something miserable has happened in between, so it's not that enjoyable after all.
Like a Friends reunion. People always want reunions of shows, or
I know.
Seinfeld reunion. Yeah. And you just would be able to type it in.
Yep.
And you'd get that reunion.
Yeah. Give me the reunion, but end it the way it should end. Not Seinfeld going to jail.
Well, and you could change things. You could change the outcome of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
It ended happily.
Right. Yeah. Give me the ending of Sopranos, but Tony gets whacked in that diner at the end, and we just end it the way it should have ended or something. Not cut to black with Can't Stop Believing. There was a musical, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, and it was based on I believe a Dickens novel. Oh yeah.
It was never finished. And so in the play, the audience decided how it was going to be finished. And they had to vote who they thought was the guilty party. And then the cast would sing the songs that go with that. They'd written all the songs for everybody. And then it got to be that certain ones were always the answer. And there were ones that they never got to do. And so then they would have audiences come in and try to stack the deck. So they had to do that so they could get that one kind of ending, which I think is fascinating, where you have, it's like a video game where you go down different hallways and you get different kinds of results. But I sit there all the time and I think this would make a good movie. This would be a good idea. And I hit on that not too long ago When I was a kid, a
Okay.
little kid, okay, long time ago, you won't even remember it. There was a group called the Cowsills. The Cowsills were big in the late 60s, early 70s, and they were a family band. Mom was singing with her children, and they did a cover of Hair, and it became like one of the top 5 songs in the country. They did their own We Can Fly, The Rain, the Park, and other things. They had a number of hits. And I always thought that would be a good show. Well, it was a show. It became the Partridge Family. And they based this TV series off this real family, the Cowsills, except it was nothing at all like their story. At one point, they actually went to the family and said, we'd like you to be on TV and be the Cowsills, but we'll call you the Partridge Family. And they were game for it, but there was a kind of a caveat there that Mom can't come with. We've already hired Shirley Jones to be the mother of the band, so she's playing that, and Mom isn't coming with. And Dad decides, nope, we're not doing this. Now, in those days, they didn't have social media. So a TV show that would get their music out there, give them a lot of attention,
Sure.
it would have been the perfect solution for them. They would have been a really huge, huge act, bigger than they were. And instead, there was a lot of infighting. Well, here's where my movie comes into play. The story after the Cowsills, after the Partridge Family encounter, was better than the story of a mom singing with her kids, because Dad was such a jerk that it really split the whole family up. The oldest brother, he said, you are out of the family, you are leaving. And he basically kicked him out of the house. And the brother went away, and they didn't have contact with him for years. But then the other brothers, one died in Katrina, another one died of emphysema. I mean, Mom died, Dad died. It's this huge story that would be a great limited series. And I found all this out when I talked to Bob Cowsill. Bob is one of the older brothers still around, and they still perform. The Cowsills are still out there. They just were named to the Hall of Fame in New England. So, who are these people? Dig in. It is a great story. I did an interview. I think we have a clip from it. You should be able to hear a little bit of what that story was all about, and you'll see what I mean. This is a story that's made for one of those movies that if I had enough money, I would bankroll it. It'd be so cool. I've always wondered, I know there was a documentary done about the family, but why has there never been a film that would tell the story? Because, it's so full of, it could be a mini series. There's so much drama in this.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because there have been a number of times, projects like that, it's all about timing and the demographic and the budget and all that's going on. It's a complex equation. But having said that, yes, we are one of the last remaining reality stories that's real in Hollywood. And there have been approaches. The most recent was a 6-episode, what's it called, limited series now. They got all these new phrases. It's wild out there. And that's not out of the realm of a possibility. It's an interesting story. That is true.
Mom seems to be the secret weapon, because if you put the mom in a group, how bad can they be, right?
I'll give you proof that you're correct. Before Mom, we were signed to 2 labels. Mercury, Phillips, and Joda had 3 releases while we were in high school, and everything, nothing. Okay. Now, right, here comes the secret weapon. Now, the secret weapon to the boys in the band, because we're teenagers, we feel it's aimed at us.
Right.
Because people are telling us, well, here's your problem. You need your mother in your group. And we go, is that your solution to what's going on here? It's 67. The last person you want in your room while you're rehearsing is your mother. Right. She's coming into the band. No, we did what we were told, and you're right. The moment she stepped onto the scene, we became different. We became unlike everybody else immediately. And the record company loved us, and the public loved us. And look, Mom was in her 30s. We were all very, very young at the time.
When Dad is as demanding as I've read, how do you deal with that? Do you just avoid him, or what do you do to make sure that there's just peace in the world?
You just described both approaches that the boys took. I mean, by the time Susan's older, she's got a whole different story. But the boys, yeah, you could. I took the avoid role. I took the avoidance. I realized at a very young age, and this is very young. This is going back to third grade, second grade, how to avoid this man, my father, how to not touch him off. Now, I have 3 brothers who took him on. They're dead today. They're gone. Now, and part of that reason is because they took him on, because when you take on your biggest nemesis in life and you're trying to coordinate a successful music career, it's very challenging. Not everyone can stand up to that pressure. And so the implosion is coming. And when it came, the family and the business is going to implode. And the ones that took on Dad are in rough shape. They don't feel good about themselves. At the time, you're trying to deal with a home life, and your dad is upsetting the business cart now because of his behavior. So it came out of the family, but as we got older into the business, now he's upsetting the business cart, and it's all going to come crashing down. And Mom couldn't stop it. None of us could stop it. By avoiding him as my solution and staying out of his way, I stayed out of his way for the rest of his life, because he did things that were so bad and nutty that I couldn't get over him. Mom was loyal and stayed loyal to Dad, so I lost her. Shouldn't have let that happen, because she's going to die at 56. Well, I don't know that. I think I'm going to have time to fix all of this. So, and that's my lesson in life.
It sounds like one of those classic situations where he was jealous, basically, of your talent. And he probably didn't have the talent that you guys did. And so this was his way of controlling the situation. Am I misreading that, or?
He was jealous of no, it's a good pickup. My brother Bill even told me what you just told me in a conversation once. He's jealous of definitely my brother Bill. And he was jealous and maybe more envious than jealous of the whole scene, because he took every opportunity to make sure if you got a little too high on that ladder, he felt it was his job to just, knock you down a few steps and make sure you didn't get too high. And so with that constant reminder from your father through your whole life, you will only get so high on that ladder. Even fighting those steps you're going to earn. You're not going to get up there. So that's the fight Bill had on. That's the fight. And yes, he was absolutely jealous because, look, he was in the Navy. He joined it when he was 17. He dropped out of school in the 7th grade. And he's got this family that took it all the way to the top with his help. And it baffled us. We're confused to this day why he didn't change once he got on top. And we're too young to even think about that back then. We are reacting to events.
Then when the Partridge Family came in and basically stole your concept, were you mad? How did you react to that or were you flattered by it? Was it a thing where you go, oh, this is really cool?
Ended up being flattered. In the beginning, they came for our story. They came to see if we could be the children in the Partridge Family, since it was our story.
Sure.
Well, I'm 19, Paul's 17, Susan's 9. She's cute. It's never for Mom. It's going to be a Shirley Jones vehicle. Now, at the time now, just remember, I'm 19. Hair is number 1 right now. So of all we've been through, we've had Raymond Park, Indian Lake, we got Something with Love America, we got hair. At 19, I think, you know what? We've battled the forces. We win. We got this. We're going to have hits forever. So when the Partridge Family comes, at that time, we're successfully on the road. We're going to the studio. The guys do not want to add a TV show to our life because we have been successful recording and touring.
Sure.
That was enough for us. And that's what we pursued from the time we were kids. And that's what we got. And that's all we ever want. We don't want to go down to that studio from whatever we heard. It's 5-6 days a week. It's all hours. We're just being lazy teenagers with those thoughts. But nonetheless, we didn't want to do it.
Thanks, Bruce, for that interview. Fascinating story there, of course. Back then, there were so many parents, because you had this in so many different ways. So you had the Cowsills, and then, of course, you had, like, with the Jackson 5, the dominating parent. And this. There's another band. Have you ever heard of the Shags?
No. Fill me in.
The Shags, it is the most comical thing. So they were a band. It was basically 3 sisters, and they came together because their father made them perform together as a band. They are terrible. They released one album. It's called The History of the World. My recommendation, you can go and listen to the music. It's on most streaming platforms. Look for the song called My Pal Foot Foot. It's a song that they wrote about their cat. It is awful. But the funny thing about this is that there's a lot of prominent musicians who actually will bring this up as being an example of like being very punk, being very DIY kind of thing. Okay. So like Frank Zappa mentioned them as an influence. Kurt Cobain mentioned them as an influence. So if you're kind of like into this like really garage rocky thing, but they just keep in mind they're terrible. It's kind of a fun listen. So I've listened to it a few times. I don't have any like Shag's album. They only did one record, but I never bought it. If you find like an original Shag's record in the wild, you'll probably have to fork over a lot of money for it because it was not pressed in high quantities. But
so where are they now?
They are like the sisters. They kind of did their own thing, and they're not performing. I think all three of them are alive. The album came out in '69, so and they were teenagers at the time, so they're probably in their 60s, 70s, something like that at this point. But yeah, it's just kind of a really fascinating story, and it just kind of after hearing about the Cowsills again, it got me thinking about the Shags.
See, could be a movie.
Yeah, My Pal Foot Foot.
Imagine though if you were able to type that in and you could create the movie.
Yeah.
For your own enjoyment.
Yeah.
We wouldn't need others to do it. We'd just be creating our own things all the time.
We'd be creating our own content, and we wouldn't need Scorsese and all them.
Right. We don't need no stinking directors. We're our own director. And then I will have black and white footage here because it'll make it better. And then at the end, I can come in and do a resolution to everything, and I will discuss what it is. Right. Does that sound like we could do that? But I think AI, if we approach it differently, it could be a real asset for us. And I think we could enjoy what there is. I don't know, maybe you out there listening, you might have ideas too that you think are something worth embracing or something that you're scared of. I don't know what that would be there.
Yeah, fascinating. All right.
I still lock the doors on the house though.
You don't know who's out there. Anything else to look forward to on the horizon?
We are getting closer and closer to the big summer movie time. Yep. And there are big ones coming, and we'll talk more later about them. You have seen the Ghostbusters film.
I did. And Frozen Empire. It's fine. It's I think like the general consensus among critics, it's mixed reviews. I think fans are going into it a little bit more open-minded. I don't think it's as good as the previous installment, Ghostbusters Afterlife. There's a certain campiness about this at times that I don't think existed in that previous one. But it's a fun watch. As a fan of the originals, growing up on the originals, it was nice to see a larger role for Dan Aykroyd because him in the original Ghostbusters, they kind of just made a little bit more of a guest appearance, I guess you could say, at the end of the last movie.
They paid him off.
Yeah. So there's definitely like a significant chunk of the movie. You do have Dan Aykroyd. Ernie Hudson plays a much larger role in this one than the last one. Bill Murray, who was always kind of lukewarm to doing more Ghostbusters movies after that second one, they probably brought him in for 2 days of shooting. That's pretty much what this felt like. Like he was in there for one scene in the middle of the movie, and
he's not in there in AI, right?
No, but he's in there in the middle, and then he kind of makes his appearance at the end, as you would expect, as they got to take on the ghoulish creature that they have to take on. But
did they like it?
Yeah, they really did. Because I remember as a kid, the original Ghostbusters movie kind of scared me a little bit, especially the librarian ghost jumping out at you and some of it, and they're watching this like, this doesn't even look real. How fake, blah blah blah. So it's kind of funny how AI has changed things, how computer graphics has changed things. But yeah, they had fun.
It made us much more discerning critics, because when you've seen something, you go, oh God, look how bad that is.
Yeah, exactly.
And the special effects were really wanes. That's why I'm sure we had the George Lucas let's redo them years. And I think that's what we look at now in the future. How will these stand up?
The one thing, and I'll say this, it's become kind of like a CGI vomit. Like when I watched The Flash, for instance, and I was excited because Michael Keaton came back as Batman, and it's up on the screen, and there's just so much computer generated imagery, this, that, and the other. There's no like just filming on a soundstage anymore. And it's really, as somebody who kind of likes that traditional filmmaking, I don't find these movies that are just an explosion of things on the screen enjoyable to watch. So a lot of those movies are just a huge, huge turnoff for me. I don't want to see that.
Well, and then you think every time you look at a scene, you go, "Oh, it's CGI."
Right. Yeah.
You don't think, no, Tom Cruise really did hang from that building. You just think, it's CGI.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he does. He is one who digs in and actually does those kind of things. But for the most part, nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to invoke the insurance clause. So they just will hang off the edge of a green screen.
Right.
And then they just add everything in. And you think, when you see the credits and there's like 7,000 names under the special effects, you think, how boring must those jobs be? You're sitting there and you're like moving just a millisecond or a millimeter or whatever of the time. And what did you really do? What was your contribution to that film? You know?
Exactly.
AI, it's the future. We'll see what happens.
All right.
We'll see where this gets us. And next week, we'll be back with something else.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you again for listening. And we will be back again next week with another episode of Streamed and Screened.
When we made our McDonald's Spicy Chicken McNuggets, you were praise hands emoji. Then we ran out, and you were streaming tears emoji. Now they're back, so you can be grinning face with sweat emoji. Order ahead on the McDonald's app.
And get Money Mouth Face emoji with 2 orders of crispy, irresistible 10-piece McNuggets, spicy or classic, for just $6. Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.